Okay, you know what? No. I want to know what happens if we do not follow that voice. So we are going to choose that choice and see what happens. No. You know what? I just can't believe you in only a couple of minutes. At least I've known that other guy for a little longer, and his arguments seem to be more weighty. You'll be sorry. Those words sounded like they were coming from another world. The voice seemed to disappear. Of course, I couldn't be sure whether my choice is right or wrong. It was a blind guess, enforced by a time limit. Nevertheless, whether I'm right or not, we'll find out soon. Hey, it's the bus. In a couple of minutes, I was standing at the bus stop with all the other pioneers. Who's the dude in the back? Is that me?
Everybody's here,
began Olga.
You're leaving our camp today, and I'd like to tell you something in parting.
You'll never leave. She was visibly nervous and desperately lost for words.
I hope that you'll remember the time you've spent here for a lifetime, and that you'll retain only pleasant memories about Sovyanok. I also hope that you become at least a little better, managed to learn something, and found new friends. Just come back next year.
The camp leader looked away. It's like she was trying to keep the tears inside. I didn't expect her to get so emotional. Although her speech sounded like complete nonsense to me, as usual. The pioneers started to crowd into the bus, babbling cheerfully. I decided to hold on a little and say a proper goodbye to this camp. All of a sudden, I felt a deep urge to throw a coin. Of course, there's no fountain here, and honestly I didn't feel like returning, but it's still just a superstition, and I don't believe in them. At least, I'd never believed in them before. Digging through my pockets, I found only a couple of candy wrappers, a pencil, and a scrap of paper. I held them for a moment, then I squatted, put the paper on the ground, and scribbled a few words. You are here for a reason. Grinning at the stupidity, I threw the scrap under the wheels of the bus and got into the cabin. I found a place in the middle. But the strangest thing was that everyone sat in pairs, and only I was alone. However, what's the difference now? I'll either disappear or will restart everything in a couple of hours. The bus was slowly moving towards the district center, occasionally bouncing over the bumps in the road. It was impossible to see anything beyond the old windows in the pitch-black dark of the night. Anyway, I couldn't care less about the surrounding countryside. I just sat and waited for the inevitable. For the first time in a long while, my head was completely empty. The pioneers around me enjoyed the trip. Ulyana and Elisa were playing cards. Lena was reading a book and Slavia was sleeping. Miku was trying in vain to start a conversation with Xenia, and Xenia was trying really hard not to start killing people. Electronique and Shurik were crafting something, as always. I was the only one completely ignored by everyone. It might be a slightly far-fetched perception. I got used to the role of being the center of the universe in the camp. Thought that everything revolved around me. Well, that might be so up to a certain degree, but here and now, I'm only a foreign object. an out-of-place molecule in the harmonic pattern of a crystal grid. I'm not sure how long we'd spent on the road, but sleep had already started to overcome me. I was desperately fighting Morpheus, trying to stay awake as long as I could. After all, it's quite possible that today is the last day of my life. Then probably it's reasonable to cling as hard as I could to those few hours of meaningless, useless existence. However, physical fatigue, and more importantly, emotional fatigue, took its toll, and I fell asleep. What? Day whatever? What? A sharp pain throbbed through my entire body. I felt it especially sharply in my temples. It feels like they're ready to shatter into 1,000 little pieces, giving the wind free access to my empty head. Probably I would not have been able to stand even 5 minutes of such torture if I hadn't opened my eyes in time. I was somewhere. It was impossible to tell precisely where. My mind was clouded in mist. My thoughts were confused. The moment between the unconscious and conscious states when you vividly remember your dreams. I was going somewhere by bus, and was about to doze off when suddenly a girl came up to me and began to speak quickly. I couldn't understand a word, but the girl looked very upset. I failed to understand what she needed from me. Time passed and she kept talking on and on. It was getting really annoying. I wanted to ask her to cut it out, or at least calm down a bit, but I failed. Either because I didn't manage to say anything, or because my words didn't reach her. I couldn't even see her face. I was simply listening and staring. Staring and listening. Perhaps it wasn't important for me then. Surely you would not try to remember what a mosquito disturbing your sleep looks like. Surely you wouldn't manage to recall the frequency of its flapping wings or the inclination of its proboscis after that. And this girl is just one of millions of voices that disturb you from concentrating, from thinking, from falling asleep. The louder her voice grew, the harder it got for me to catch her words. The bus cabin, the seats worn by time, the uneven floor, the rusty ceiling, the cracked glass of the windscreen, everything was floating away. Along with her. And then I felt a unique sense of relief. It didn't matter how real the bus and the girl had been. It was nothing but a bug to me. And here I am, hanging in total emptiness and falling inside a dream. Dreams can be really something. Not quite a nightmare, yet definitely not something pleasant. I got up, rubbed my face in to get back to reality, gave a loud yawn and prepared to clean myself up. It was a really gray morning. Unable to find my hygiene kit on the nightstand, I concluded that I could manage without it. It was hard to get dressed. My hands were trembling like hell. I looked at my reflection in the mirror and checked out my 2-week stubble. Well, perhaps Olga had a razor. It was only when I went outside that I understood that I'm not in a pioneer camp. I'm back in my apartment. And I've just come out of my room into a passageway, not out of the cabin. I was overwhelmed with surprise, with dismay, fear, even with terror. But how? I sat down on the bed and buried my face into my hands, trying to remember the chain of yesterday's events. The bus, the last day of the term. I fell asleep and woke up back home. Well, to some degree it might even seem quite logical. It seemed that the initial astonishment has worn off during the first few seconds. After all, the fact that I came back like this, after a week-long absence, is no stranger than my sudden appearance at some pioneer camp of the 80s in the first place. The events of the last 2 days flashed before my eyes in an instant. That mysterious pioneer, his words. But how did I manage to get back to reality then? According to him, I was going to be stuck there forever, as there's no exit. On the other hand, I wasn't alone. That pioneer at the bus stop and the mystery voice emphasized the contrary, that the exit exists. Does that mean I found it? I managed to get out of the endless loop? But how? Nevertheless, I wasn't sure whether I should rejoice or grieve. Over the last week, I'd kind of gotten used to the everlasting inner monologue, the search for answers, and the in-depth analysis of everything, so I couldn't simply accept this fact as it was, without figuring out what exactly happened to me. Sure, he told me that I'm the only one who has observed the existence of other guys like me during their very first loop, but does that mean anything? Anyway, all his theories and ideas instantly collapsed, like a house of cards. Now, I had to decide how I should react. Of course I should rejoice. After all, I'm back in the real world. Maybe the last 7 days were just a dream. Indeed, there's absolutely no evidence that I really was there. I don't see my pioneer uniform anywhere. I look my age, just like I did before. My phone is on the table, fully charged. But one can't deceive one's own memory. One can't live through such terrifically real experiences in a dream. I still remember the events of the whole week in great detail. Perhaps I was in a coma all this time? An ironic laugh escaped my lips. Nah, that's not an option either. Then, all's well that ends well? The last few hours in the camp flashed through my mind. Indeed, I wasn't hoping to get out, either from that camp or from that reality, and I was pretty much ready for another week. And another, and another. I'd accepted my role. I'd reconciled with my destiny. And what was I supposed to do after all that stuff happened? I heaved a doomed sigh, got up from my bed with considerable effort, and went to my computer. That's weird, but according to it, Only 14 hours have passed since my disappearance from this world. Not a whole week. A new message on the instant messenger.
Hi, Semyon. Yesterday. It was legendary. See you later.
My college friend. It was him who invited me to that party with the rest of his college friends that I was going to attend. Suddenly, all my senses came back to me. The headache, the dizziness, all the symptoms of a hangover. It looks like I indeed attended that party yesterday, and I was partying hard. So there was no pioneer camp? But then, where did all these memories, emotions, and feelings come from? All of this was so incomprehensible that I became enraged. I began cursing foully, trying to tear my hair out and hammering on the keyboard with my fists. I didn't return to a normal state until there were no keys left on it. Why should I care so much? Nobody worries when a dream or hallucination ends. Moreover, people are usually glad that it happens. Was I really that prepared to stay there with that my return to reality became so undesirable to me? And then, a simple and obvious thought crossed my mind. Perhaps I'm just going insane. Indeed, madmen frequently have visions which they perceive as reality. Besides, I had all the symptoms of insanity. I never leave the four walls of my prison. I never socialize. I have lots of psychological problems. Well, that explains a lot. My dark, nervous laughter echoed in the room. Guess it's the right time for me to visit a therapist. Or rather, a psychiatrist. Or should I just surrender myself at the asylum? A horse, half my kingdom for a horse. I cried at the top of my lungs between bouts of my manic laughter. Dispute not with her, she is a lunatic. The racket my neighbors made on the wall calmed me down somehow. If I'm tripping that bad, it looks like only a lobotomy could help me. I just sat completely freaked out for several hours, doing nothing, thinking nothing, just staring at the monitor, long since gone into sleep mode. Finally, I moved the mouse and opened a few tabs in the browser. So, what's new? F5! F5! As if the events of the past week had never happened. Come on, do you have to grieve for a hallucination? Was it real? Sure. Lots of memories? Sure. Looks true enough? By all means, yes. Any proof? Nope. The verdict is clear, as is my future course. I have long suspected that my current lifestyle wasn't doing me any good. I wasn't ready for such an unusual event, but so what? I'll have to be more prepared for my next trip. Night. An endless stream of threads and images took my mind off my lamentations and considerations. An instant message window popped up, most unexpectedly.
Hi, how are you doing?
Sure, quite an original way to start a conversation. Doing fine. The contact's profile was completely empty, not even a nickname, just a 9-digit number. You can't guess what kind of person is on the other end by just looking at a number, can you? Sure, someday it will be all different. Unified digital identifiers instead of names, a couple of symbols for a biography, several bytes of personality, and 3.5 bits of feelings.
Get home safely.
Probably someone from yesterday's party. Seems like it.
You do remember everything I told you yesterday, right?
Well, I guess not. There was yet another message after a long pause.
I see.
Honestly, I don't give a damn who this is and why he is messaging me. Until this unidentified individual starts harassing me, I could easily tolerate his presence in my contact list.
Well, that's okay. We'll meet again. We surely will.
Sure, looking forward to it. All right.
Bye.
I didn't reply. This odd, screwed-up day at last was slowly coming to an end. Going to bed, I yet again recalled in my head all the events that seemed so real for me. Where am I going to wake up tomorrow? Would these hallucinations return? Nah, I'll probably just forget everything. Strange, but now I'm really feeling that everything happening now is real. There was just a fiction, a game of deformed imagination, or really something fantastical, and here is reality. Sometimes inconvenient, sometimes it unfolds differently from how you wish. Surprises you like this, but it's still reality. I fell asleep with these thoughts. Bit by bit, my life resumed its normal course, and I started to forget the events of that week. After all, nothing bad happened. Even if it was indeed real, who cares? That were only 7 days in a pioneer camp. I wasn't killed. Nobody kidnapped me to conduct experiments. I wasn't brainwashed, so why do I care now about the reason? And if indeed it was a hallucination, I could only hope that it won't repeat itself. I was still a shut-in. My computer and the internet were my only friends, and the keyboard was the only communication channel connecting me to the outside world. The F5 key became the main thing in my life again. Come to think of it, it really wasn't all that bad. Yet, one day, a familiar combination of digits popped up on the screen. That strange contact of mine had come online once again.
Hey.
Hey.
How are you doing?
Doing fine. Probably I knew him from somewhere, but who cares anyway?
Any news?
Not really.
Stability is a sign of true class.
One might say so.
Oh, I see.
This conversation was over for me, but he didn't seem to feel like that.
So, nothing has changed?
Nope. Should it have?
Well, it's not like you experience stuff like that on a day-to-day basis. Not everybody gets to experience it either.
What are you talking about?
Don't you get it?
I was starting to. I'd prefer you explain.
Don't you remember the camp?
It felt like an electric shock. All the events of that week immediately sprang up to my mind. My hands started to tremble. A cold sweat burst from my forehead. I turned around in horror, already imagining that I'd see aliens, ghosts, or the Grim Reaper. But there was nobody in my room except me, as always. I ran to the corridor, checked in the kitchen and in the bathroom. Still nobody. At last, I returned to the computer. The same message window was still flashing steadily, as if it was a perfectly ordinary message. Who are you? My hands were trembling so much I could hardly hit the right keys. Oh, so you do remember it. My hallucinations seemed to be continuing. Or did I never leave the camp in the first place? Or it's just a dream after all? Or... I don't know what to say. I admitted sincerely. Anyhow, I felt that this entity, that's the only definition that I could think of, doesn't need any kind of internet to communicate with me.
Well, you can just keep silent. Everything's perfectly clear.
That smiley at the end of the line looked like the devil himself, stretching its deformed jaws open to devour me. What is happening to me? I finally made up my mind to ask the question.
Nothing. Nothing at all. You're just living your regular life.
But the camp, was it real?
And what do you think?
I'm not sure.
If it seems real to you, then yes, it was real. If not, then it wasn't. It's just that simple.
That's not simple at all.
What will happen to me next? I whispered. Nothing to worry about.
It seems that it really heard me without the use of the internet. Terror chained my whole body. I closed my eyes and curled myself into a ball. Why are you doing this to me? I started to lose it. Words were coming out of my mouth by themselves. Illogical, meaningless sets of words. Why? Why me? What for? What for? Leave me alone. I haven't done anything bad. Several minutes after I found the courage to open one eye and take a look at the monitor. You are the reason for everything. The message window was flickering coldly. And what's next? Oh, you'll see that soon enough. Everything started fading to black in my eyes. Noise filled my ears, and I started to feel dizzy. I felt that my very soul was escaping its physical shell. The events of the last few days became hazy, as if they'd all happened to someone other than me. Then, the memories of the camp started to vanish, as if someone was using an eraser to thoroughly rub out words written with a pencil. Moments later, I felt and sensed nothing, as though I was plunged into a state of cosmic bliss. If anyone saw me at that moment, they would notice that I was smiling. I'm kind of stuck here. I hit the report spam button, closed the window, switched to the browser and glanced at the clock. Time to get going, or I'm gonna be late.
Forever alone.
Alright, so that's the good end. Every story has its beginning and its end. Every story has its own routine, synopsis, contents, key points, a prologue, and an epilogue. And there is no book which, if you read it again, would not reveal new details you didn't notice before. Every story has its beginning and its end. Almost every. Huh. That's a slightly more satisfying ending than the other, but still relatively frustrating because you don't learn the other characters' stories or how they play in this. There's gotta be more to this. It's just a matter of playing through all the choice options and seeing how the different storylines play out. But this was definitely a lot more satisfying than the other one. Because this, you actually had some sort of resolution. The other one just boom. Okay, so with having taken this into the context of the overall story, actually, it doesn't really help explain the overall story. It continues questions and raises a few more, actually. But I'm glad that I did that, so now we see both of Semyon's endings at least. Now it's just a matter for others to play the other storylines and see just what other possibilities there are. Well, with that, I truly will see you next time.